really pleased in Cleveland to hold a national town hall meeting here last week for many of the reasons that you already described, both to share some of the promising programs that we think that we have here on the ground, and also the phenomenal opportunity that it gave for many people living with AIDS and people who've been working on this issue for some time just to speak to their experience. I was wondering what role you see for local communities in forwarding your work, and beyond this initial phase, what role we can play in the national strategy.
Well, the first thing I would say to that is this is a national strategy. It's not a federal strategy. And so I think that we've been trying to broadly engage lots of people, including state and local governments and others. But this isn't even a governmental strategy. Part of our challenge is to re-engage the public. When we're at a different point in the epidemic and people were more fearful personally about getting HIV or fearful about the effects, we saw whole communities mobilize. We need to figure out how we get that back. And I think part of what we need to do with this strategy is reconvince lots of groups and communities that we all have our part to play. It's not enough to say, okay, I wrote my letter to my member of Congress and so I did my part. We all need to engage in this epidemic, and I think when we have a strategy that says we're going to move in this direction, whatever it is, some of it will be about actions the federal government will need to take, some will be state and local governments, but also we hope that there'll be new actions that businesses can take, that communities can take, that churches can take. I don't know what those things are because we don't have the strategy yet, but hopefully that anybody will see where they fit into making this strategy a success. I've said many times the success of what we're doing can't be measured by what I do, what my office does. It's really about stimulating a broader national dialogue on HIV.
Hi, my name is Lawrence White. I'm here with the AIDS Task Force of Greater Cleveland, and I'm also an Empowerment Core Group graduate. And my question is, a lot of times working with empowerment, we realized that it was a lot more for the youth to teach other youth than to have somebody come in as like the mother-father situation. They really don't pay attention to that. And so my question is basically, how do you feel about, getting more youth active and being here where I am? Because I've been granted different, special circumstances to be here. And most of my normal friends who go to the center that I go to, they don't get these opportunities. So how would you branch them out so they can become leaders and be more positive in their own communities for themselves instead of having to rely on the directors and the teachers and things that they really wouldn't pay attention to?
Right. I think one of the things we know, but also that we learned when we've been around the country, is that people listen to their peers in a unique way. So to be effective, we really need to figure out how to engage broadly peers. I think, when I started at the National Association of People with AIDS, we ran a speakers bureau. And you'd think, well, maybe we don't need that now, but it's still very effective for people living with HIV that have lived an experience to come forward and talk. But I think the same thing with youth. I know that you could be far more effective talking to young people than I could be. I mentioned we had this exciting meeting at the White House last week because we want to provide opportunities for them to have opportunities. I don't know that there's one sort of magic solution where we say, okay, we need to engage youth, so from the White House I'm going to make it happen. But I think by broadly engaging agencies, when federal agencies hear in a strategy that we're going to focus on youth, when we give them the data about youth, and we tell people that we've heard over and over that peer engagement is important to be effective, that we can lead to other people that run programs that do different things to think about new opportunities to engage young people and others.
My name is Regina Burton. I'm a social worker with the AIDS Task Force of Greater Cleveland. I am very aware of all the changes, and as you said, there's going to be some groups and some areas where decisions may not be popular. But my concern is mainly with the new changes, and you said that there is going to be an area for experimentation. What is going to be allowed for us social workers to, adjust to these changes? How effective and how forceful is it going to be in that area?
Well, I think I was talking about the move away from absence-only funding, where we said a pot of money would be, most of the money will go towards what are proven evidence-based programs, but we want to allow experimentation of new initiatives. So if you, maybe from your experience, say, I have a new idea that I think will be effective at preventing HIV, reducing teen pregnancy, I want to test out this idea, and we'd fund programs for a few years to evaluate it. I don't have a specific answer for what that means for social workers, but our conception is to say if we only have 20 or so interventions that have been validated to work effectively, we think we need more than that. So that pot of money is to just try to come up with some new approaches that can be shown to be effective.
Hello, my name is Bob Bucklew, and I work at the Case Western Reserve AIDS Clinical Trials Unit. And one of the things that really struck me from the town hall meeting last week was when a gentleman stood up and, after hearing over 100 comments, said we could have been having the same comments back in the early 1990s. The governmental policy, we say what we need, and it doesn't change. And it was struck that we're still talking about injection, drug use, clean needles. We're still talking about gay men and the restrictions that the federal government puts on and what we can even say to gay men about their sexuality. And finally, I appreciate, and I think we're all inspired by the president's desire to bring people together. But some people's viewpoints, whether it be church leaders opposed to homosexuality, people that think injection drug use there's no real compromise sometimes in effective HIV prevention in bringing everybody on board. So I would just urge you to stick with what we know works and hopefully argue people to come on board as opposed to watering down some real life-saving policy changes that can be made.
Maybe I was less clear in how I talked about it. I think we agree with what you're saying. I think what the president would say he expects of his staff is that we engage people in a respectful way and recognize that many people have multiple experiences and approach things in a different way, but we really have to be guided by the best evidence we have about what works and effective. It doesn't mean meaningless compromise just to make people happy, especially when we're talking about spending federal resources. We're in very difficult budget times, so we can't afford to be spending our limited federal resources on things that we don't think work effectively.
Today at the City Club of Cleveland, we have been listening to a Friday Forum featuring Director of the Office of National AIDS Policy, Jeffrey Crowley. Thank you, Mr. Crowley. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. This forum is now adjourned.
For information on upcoming speakers or for podcasts of the City Club, go to cityclub.org.